Hi everyone, welcome. And ICAF and ICAF members, we cordially invite and thank Roberta Griffith for accepting and giving her time for us. And before I give the mic to her, the platform to her, you all have read about her. She's larger than life, her work, if you go Google her, it goes on and on and on. I'll read a little bit about her personal life, which she had sent it to me. It is about her that she loves teaching, and she taught for 42 years ceramics, drawing, and painting. Was chair of the art department for 17 years, helped and built a multi-million-dollar building for art and music at her campus, Hartwick College, quadrupled the budget and program. Travel is very important to her. Backpacked around the world in 1995, trained up through Spain, through Europe and Spain, and then after St. Petersburg and Moscow, nonstop across Russia to Beijing for 14 days. Then a month in China and a month in Japan, visited museums, galleries, gardens, and shrines. Wonderful trip in 1995 when she was only 65 years old. Now that she has returned and enjoying success as a Hawaiian artist, she moved here in 2006, although she continues to go back and forth from her home here in New York, where she has a state-of-art studio. Life is great for her, touch wood, and she says she has much to accomplish. Amazing, and more power to you, Roberta. The platform is to you. Please, we are all waiting to hear you. Thank you.
David, could you turn on the top light maybe? Anyway, hi, I'm Roberta Griffith, and today I want to present how I built a large ceramic mural in Anderson Center for the Arts at Hartwick College from August 2005 through October 2007. Then back in 1973, when helping plan and design the new building for music and art at the college, I included a 25-foot area on the first floor corridor. You can see the corridor, and I'm standing there, for a mural. And I didn't have time to get to it until 30 years later when I was ready to retire, which I did. And so I created a large mural to fill this space. And first, I started out by taking a lot of photographs all over New York State of rocks and things on my research. And then I made many tests. In 2005, I asked for permission to work up in a building at the campus near my department where I could lay out a large easel. And I got permission in August, and I started fundraising to make the ceramic mural, and I raised $10,000. And the slip tests I made are on the right. I made many tests for what I wanted to do to use to color the mural, the ceramic mural. And I didn't use any glazes, only slips. And I tested them on the clay body a friend gave me from Minnesota, Bruce Howdle. He was in the ceramics department there. And it was pretty incredible. And then up in the building called the Pole Barn, I built, I had the head carpenter at the college, and I applied for a $2,000 research grant in the spring of 2004, and a student assistant to pay a student assistant to help me, and making plans to build the mural. And then my colleague and resident artist in glass, Eric Halverson, also assisted me through the whole project. And then I got the permission, so we built this large easel. A maintenance built it for me. I was very lucky to be working at a college where I could get all this additional support because I couldn't possibly do that myself. And so you see me on the left of varnishing the 30-foot curved plywood easel that I'm going to build the mural on, and it's on a curved wall at the end. So the mural had to be built on a curved easel. And then after I varnished and shellacked the wood, then I taped the burlap over, and I taped my major areas where I wanted to lay out the clay from the model. I had made a small clay model. You can see it slightly over my shoulder on the right image. And so then I stapled the burlap on, and then I was ready to get the clay together. Whoops, sorry. I put the burlap on to help hold the clay over the plywood and also to keep it from sticking to the wood. It helped a lot. It made a big difference. So we made over 2,000 pounds of clay and of this formula that I got from my friend for the mural. And there on the left, I'm keeping the clay damp, and I covered, and I did that for a year and a half as we built the mural, because I was teaching full-time and working on vacations and summers. And it was in the pole barn, and you can see how the mural is on getting thrown down on the burlap. And then when working on it, I kept the clay damp with and I worked on it with garden hose and tools, and then I couldn't walk on it after I laid the clay down, so I had to reach over and sculpt it as I went along. So as I threw the clay down and my assistant slammed the clay down on the burlap to keep the bubbles out, then we worked it, and they followed my plan. And there I'm working and using various tools. And I kept it covered for so long. It was amazing. And there I'm shaping. You can see I'm halfway down on the left. I used 2.5 tons of clay for construction. And there on the very back behind me on the left, you can see my large easel that is my model there in this building called the pole barn on my curved easel. And we're throwing down the clay and sculpting it as we go along. And on the right side, the clay construction is completed. And the clay had to be it was a lot of work, and there was a balcony in the pole barn, so I was able to get up on the balcony to take a picture, to get these and others to take pictures of me working, so that you can see the whole mural under construction. It was a lot of work. I had to borrow a knife from the kitchen, 15-inch knife, so I could cut some of the areas of the clay. It was a pretty amazing project to get involved with so much clay. And then I hope you can appreciate the enormity of the project. It's just really, really, really big. And there, I've had to then, after it was completely laid out, along with the work study student, and we got that all together. And then I had to cut every section apart into these smaller pieces to fire them, of course. And because it was thick, we had to hollow out the back, and I had a number of people helping me hollow out the back of each piece. You can see on the left, we're hollowing back sides in a grid pattern to lighten the clay to fire it so it wouldn't explode. And there on the right side, we're cutting the pieces apart and moving the rows. And I had to cut the whole mural across that enormous easel and cut each piece. And I worked on the mural full time. And then during 2 January sessions when I wasn't teaching in 2006 and 2007, I began cutting the clay in these rows that you can see on the right. And then a number of students, my student assistant, Enrique Carrasco, and ceramic students helped me. And my work study students, Ariana Bragg, Chris Januski, and Liz Stell, and then Eric Halverson, my companion from glassblowing and sculpture. We hollowed out the back sides of 355 ceramic pieces on these foam pads on the left. and then replace each piece back in position, but moving it about 5 feet over. And we worked across the mural. The length was 35 feet. And because the mural ended up being about close to 25 feet. So I had 5 feet to move the clay from where I cut it over to the other side. And you can see me cutting the pieces apart and moving cut rows over little by little. Excuse me. And I moved the 4 feet to the end of the easel to have workspace between each row. So as I cut, and then we hollowed out the back and then moved it over piece by piece. It was an enormous amount of work. And it took a long time to hollow out the back of each single piece on that 25 feet of the clay that we'd thrown down. And that was fun, but work. And there are more students cutting out the pieces. And the work continued part-time and full-time. And when I replaced a hollowed out piece that didn't quite fit from handling, I made it fit by hammering it into place with a stick. You can see my stick there and the hammer on the right as I'm placing the piece back in perfect position. And there, so it could cut it. So we went down across the whole mural doing these cuts and hollowing out each piece and then putting them back in place. I put them, I had a lot of help. 36 people volunteered and paid and all together. And I made it fit by hammering it. And then I painted several hollowed out rows at a time, because if I didn't paint them when I could reach them, I couldn't get back to them. So for a year and a half, I went through this process of cutting it, throwing the clay down, cutting it apart, and then putting each piece back in place that had been hollowed out on the back, as you see on the right. And then the finished pieces were uncovered and left to dry. And then until the end of January in 2007, then by April in 2007, two work-study students, Marge Gormley and Becky Nemchek, and I numbered the ceramic pieces on the bottom when we took them from the pole barn where I built the mural down to the ceramic studio. So we had to cart every piece down to the ceramic studio about, and another whole building where my kilns were to fire them. So I built it in one place, carted it down to the building, and then had to cart it back up to the pole barn to lay it out after it was fired. And then next slide here. That's my 60 cubic foot downdraft kiln that I built. And my student worker, Christian Uski, oversaw loading the kilns with me. And I had to stack it up by hand. And I didn't have a door, or it wasn't on a shuttle, so I had to brick up the door every time I fired it. But here you can see fired bricks from the mural being unloaded from the kiln after one firing. And I fired every single piece in my downdraft kiln that I built in 1975 when I went to that college. I built the big gas kiln, the downdraft reduction kiln, and I had electric kilns, alpine kilns. And everything was bits fired in the electric kilns. And then I did the high fire in the gas kiln to cone 10 or 2300 degrees, which I'm going to say cone 10. Most everybody knows what cone 10 is. And then in the I had unbricked the door. That was a lot of work, bricking up the door and then bricking in the arch for the kiln. And when I built that kiln, there's no mortar. The bricks are laid up dry. And those are kiln shells weigh about 20 pounds a piece. So it was a lot of work. And so then after I got everything fired, we had to cart everything back up to the pole barn and lay it out again on the easel, well, on the floor. And then I'm assembling fired number pieces on the floor. And so during the first 2 weeks in June of 2007, my former student, Andrew Ionoski, and his girlfriend, Kristen Hoffman, they came back to the college in the summer. and to help me with the mural. They donated their time. People donated so much time to help me. I'd raised the $10,000, but that was to pay for the supplies and things and the labor of, I had a few paid workers, but people at the college donated so much time to help me. And we took we hauled back in my station wagon. We hauled all those fired clay pieces you see on the left back up. And as we unloaded them, we numbered them because I numbered them on the back so that I wouldn't lose track of their position in the mural. If you don't keep track of where things go, you can't possibly put things back together. And so we hauled those fired clay pieces from the kiln room back up to the pole barn. And then we unloaded the fired pieces and numbered with stickies on the, thank God for stickies. I mean, what will we do without yellow stickies? We numbered the top of each one to keep the pieces in order. And that was absolutely critical to get the rows, and then and then after we got the pieces back together, then we laid out the plywood and we numbered the pieces, because one of the caveats of making the mural was that I had to make it removable. They didn't really want me to do it, so they tried to make it difficult, but I meet all challenges. And so I figured out a system, and we epoxied all the ceramic pieces onto plywood. And as we go along, I'll show you how we attach those together. So that mural on the wall is removable. It can be taken down. I don't know if they ever will, but that was one of the challenges I had to meet, was to make it removable. So that was a challenge. I couldn't just cement them to the wall. That was not possible. So that entailed so much extra work, and hauling all those pieces down to the kiln room and then back up to the pole barn just took an enormous amount of time. And then after we got them back up, we had to make plans as to how many pieces could we fit onto a board. We had to do boards that we could handle to put onto the wall. And so then this is the beginning corner on the lower right-hand corner. We figured we could get 6 to 7 pieces, depending on the size. Some pieces we could only get 3 on if they were really heavy, but we had to plan each section of wood on the plywood that we're going to epoxy these ceramic pieces onto the plywood with PC7, which is a really strong epoxy. And then each panel can be attached to the wall. So we had to weigh each one to decide how many pieces could reasonably fit on a piece of wood that we could handle and attach and to the installation. And we worked in vertical rows, and 2 to 7 ceramic pieces actually were placed on each panel. You can see me lifting the panel on the corner. And as we laid out, and we had to go all the way across the mural, row by row, to lay these panels out, weighing each piece to see how many would fit. And then this is a view of the first panel in the first row, and then the renumbered number 1. And then and then we had to put the pieces back on the floor in the row with the rows slightly separated. And so these are assembling fired numbered pieces. And then we're back up in the pole barn now from firing these down in the kiln room, which was a tremendous work carrying things back and forth. Then here's row number 1 with number 1. And then you can see this is the first panel here on the right. And then slightly separated, and we're doing the panels as we move across and planning the plywood backing. That took an enormous amount of time. And it's numbered number 1, that's panel 1. And after the row was decided, we put the rows back. And then after we got the whole thing laid out on the plywood with slight separations, then we began the next step, which took quite a long time. And the next step was laying out the mural and planning each 2 rows. And then Andrew came back and helped me with his girlfriend, and we we planned each row and we made a paper template for the edge of each row to cut the plywood so the pieces would fit on the plywood. We had to draw pictures around each little piece. And so the left photo shows Andrew making a paper pattern for the edge of a new row of backing board. And after marking the first edge with the paper template, then he could cut the plywood and put it back in place on the mural for the amount of pieces it would hold. So that was a laborious project. Also, we worked across the entire mural, row by row, making the edge so that he could cut the plywood to fit how many pieces we could get. And on those larger ones, we could only put 2 pieces there on your left. And so each row, they take the paper pattern, then take it over and then cut the plywood row, then lay it back down and lay the pieces on so that they fit. That was a wonderful, wonderful that they came back to help me. It was just an incredible process. And after getting everything to fit, then you can see me with the cut plywood backing for a new row. And then that big piece that I'm holding would be cut into pieces for the panels. And it's a plywood board for a new row after cutting the edge. First, you had to cut the edge on the vertical piece of plywood. And then you mark the opposite edge as well as mark around each ceramic piece before removing the ceramics to cut the other edge and cut apart its panels. And then each panel had to be cut apart. When the holding has, the piece I'm holding, you can see barely see the markings to cut the panels apart. And each one is numbered. And so the mural had to be moved completely across the easel. Again, I'm working on the easel on the pole barn. And each row had to be cut apart, and then each panel had to be cut apart and the pieces laid on to make sure everything was coming together. And then on your right, we're mixing the PC7, which they gave me at a very reasonable price, but we used a lot, about 4 cans of PC7 with A and B parts. And so you have to mix it together, which we were going to use. And you could only mix enough to do a couple panels at a time. Due to the short drying time, the PC7 would set up fairly quickly. So we're mixing Kristen and Andrew are mixing up the PC7. Well, I did too. And then for each panel. So it was just a very laborious process. And there's Kristen smiling and putting epoxy on the back of the hollowed out panel. And it just took each single piece. And you can see all the pieces numbered down past Andrew on the right. The epoxied pieces are getting placed on. So we're epoxying the edge on the plywood for each panel. And you can see Andrew holding up the bottom of the piece there with the epoxy on it. And we put epoxy on the plywood. And those panels have all been cut apart. And you can see that's a panel, and he's finishing up that panel. And we've already worked halfway down the mural where we started at the far end and did this process through each panel. They are all laid back together so that the mural fits. And each one is epoxied onto its panel, and then the panel is shoved together. So the mural is, each panel, they still have their numbered stickies on, so we know where things go. And they were just incredible. And we did that in 2 weeks. Everything was cut apart on the mural, epoxied, and then placed back where it went. And each edge had to be placed right where it belonged. And he is, and we put wax paper on the edge of a finished row so that the row wouldn't stick together. You can't really see the wax paper, but we had a wax on the far side of Andrew. There's a row, there's a layer of wax paper. So when the panel gets shoved back in place, it can't stick to the one next to it. And wax paper worked great against the epoxy. It kept things from sticking together. It was amazing. And the new panels had to be shoved slightly together to fit, and you didn't want them to stick, so the wax paper was essential. And the PC7 epoxy was donated by a company for half the price. So that was incredible because it took a lot of PC7, which is an amazing, very, very strong epoxy. Because I didn't want the pieces to fall off the boards when they were put up on the wall, of course. So anyway, with my two helpers and I, we put that thing together. It was just amazing. And there you can see as we have the 355 ceramic pieces are epoxied onto 97 sections or panels. We had 97 panels. This is in the pole barn. Then each panel, after carting back the fired pieces up to the pole barn and sticking them in, planting each panel, and then sticking them onto the panels, and then moving them down the 3 feet, then the whole thing, that's the entire mural. Then you have the 5 feet here at the end. The entire mural on the curved easel has been completed, and it's fired, and each panel is stuck together. Then we had to take each panel back to the art building, to the ceramic studio, which is and the mural was going to be installed just outside the ceramic studio in the corridor in a niche that I'd left for the building. So you have all 355 mural pieces are epoxied onto the 97 panels, and each panel was numbered on top. So we moved them back from the pole barn. In July of 2007, in the summer, I worked with a crew of 3, Eric Halverson, and a former student, and a girl from town, Rachel Fox, and Carly Knight. Rachel is back in the ceramic studio on the right, chipping off the edges and making sure that the panels are all clean so that they'll fit together tightly. And extra epoxy had to be chiseled off for a perfect fit. And then it was laid back together. So there's Rachel chipping off the edges, and we all chipped away as we got it back. And that's up in the pole barn on the left, and on your right, she's back in the ceramic studio. We've hauled it all back to the ceramic studio now. And here we are in the ceramic studio. I pushed all the wheels aside, and we're on the floor working on newspaper and checking all the edges of the panels, and I'm painting the edges. I didn't use any grout between them, so I didn't want the edges of the boards to show through the cracks of the panels. So I painted around each panel there on the floor. Each panel got painted on the epoxied edges and on the plywood so that you couldn't see it against the wall, because I didn't want to paint the whole wall. So I just painted the edges of things as I went. And here on the left, you can see me painting edges of the panels, and they're on the left and then on the right in the first image. And then you can see the black around the bottom on the plywood. And there you have the panels on the right side are the painted panels, and they're all ready to install. And of course, we still have the stickies on each panel so that we know the order that they will be installed. So we all worked on that, and all the edges got painted. So we have this labor of love, let me tell you. It took a long time to paint all those edges. And then after all the edges were painted, this is where the panel was going to be installed. That is in the corridor on the left, between ceramics on the right side, and on the left side in the first image is the sculpture department and the door to the ceramics department. And that's 25 feet on a curved wall. It doesn't look that curved, but trust me, it's curved. And it's a 10-foot wide corridor. And And on the right is the back of a numbered piece, which is number 1. That's panel number 1. And we worked out a system where we use these brackets and tapcons and screws. Those little metal shims are screwed onto the back of each panel on the top and on the left side, because we're going to go from right to left and screw those into the wall to make it removable. So that was the system we devised, and I painted those edges. So here you see the panel ready, number 1, to go down in the lower right-hand corner over here on the left. And the 2 holes were screwed into the top edge on the left side, and then these brackets were screwed onto the cinder block wall with tapcons. A tapcon is a screw that you have to drill into the wall and to make it removable, which was a condition of the college's permission. And we used over 1,200 tapcons, and the brackets were donated by Bobby Williams from Cambridge Corporation, a friend. He donated all those tapcons and metal pieces. That cost a lot of money. And so, I mean, I effected savings wherever I could, and people were so generous and helpful. It was just incredible. And then, after all the tapcons, now then the 4 of us, Carly Knight and Rachel and Eric and I, took 2 weeks after everything was glued and epoxied onto the boards. And here you can see on the lower right-hand corner, panel number 1, panel number 2, and we're working from the bottom up to the top and installing each panel, and Eric is screwing the bracket into the wall on the top and on the left, and then the next one will slide right in next to it. And then it made dust having to drill holes, and I'm on the right and I'm sweeping up the dust from the tapcon holes. And you can see how the panels are installed there on the left and on the top when you see me, where you see me sweeping. And those are screwed right into the wall to make it removable, which was the thing that I had to do in order to install the mural. And that took 2 weeks. And a tapcon is a concrete anchor screw, and you have to drill through each hole in the bracket before screwing the panel into the cinder block wall. And then the drilling dust was swept up. So drilling to put the tapcon in left dust, and I didn't want dust there, so I slept and it was clean. And then after we would get each panel on, after sweeping up the dust, then I would paint the edges of the wall. I didn't want to paint the whole wall, so I just painted right around the edge of each panel. There you can see more of the corridor, and that's the ceramics door on your left. And I'm painting the edges. I had already painted the edges of the mural, and then I painted the wall between each section because I didn't want anything to show through a crack because I didn't use any grout. So I wanted to make sure it was black there and nothing popped through to destroy the effect of the mural. And I didn't use any grout between the panels. So after painting the wall, and it was 12 feet high. So we had a mini lift that we borrowed that we could use on the right to install the panels up on top, which the mini lift went up and down, and there's the vacuum cleaner, and so you can really see how I painted the edge of each on the wall of each panel. After painting the edge of the panels in the studio, then I painted the edges on the wall so no white would peep through. I just didn't want any white to show at all. And we went from right to left down that entire 25-foot wall in that 10-foot corridor outside the ceramics studio. It just took a long time to do that. And that was in July 2007. We started on the bottom row. We worked vertically from right to left. And we screwed the panels on the wall all the way across, panel by panel, all 97 panels. And here you can see on the upper right, on the left, is where we're going to put the glass for the sky, and the rock face there below that. And there you can see us on the mini lift installing more upper panels up to the top edge of the mural and the left. And then on the right, I'm there with Carly holding the, you had to hold each panel to put it onto the wall with the tap cons. So it took a couple people to hold the panel, another person to screw the tap cons in, or maybe one person. I'm sitting there on the floor on the lower. We're halfway across, Carly and I'm holding the panel with my feet because it's easier than holding it with my hands, while she screws in the screw in the concrete through the bracket on the panel to install the lower panels with tap cons. And that was pretty funny. And you can see the corner then, and that's the sculptured door there on the far end. We're halfway across now on the panel. I'm getting it up on the wall. And then I painted blue where the sky was going to go, that we did with the cast glass over there on the left. But we're using ladders in the mini lift because you can't reach the top to drill the screw holes in. And so each panel was screwed into the wall, and then the mini lift was invaluable. It was, they have big lifts, but that mini lift was invaluable getting up and down. And then on the left, we have a crew of 3 installing the panels. Occasionally, Eric had to grind the edge of a panel because it had to fit perfectly. So he was just incredible help. My friend who teaches glass, he's there in the yellow shirt on the left. And then Carly and I are drilling, and she's drilling, and I'm holding on the right. And the installation we just worked steadily for 2 weeks in the summer. In October, we finished up, but in the summer in July, every day for 2 weeks, the 4 of us, to put each panel up on the wall. And so, having worked from 2005 in August, when I laid out the panel, let's see, we're there, and then we get to when and then after we got all the way down to the end, we were ready to celebrate. And there you can see the entire corridor. And on the left is the door to sculpture. And down at the far end of the mural is the door to ceramics. And then the long corridor past the studio to the entry of the building. And then on the right, we're getting ready to sign the final panel. So we all signed up at the top, hot damn, and we each signed. There's me, Griffith 07, Eric Harrison, and then everybody signed. And you can see the brackets. Each one had 2 screws in it onto the wall, besides the 2 screws onto the back of the panel. That took an enormous amount of time to put the brackets on the back of each panel, and then to put each panel up. And we're ready to install the final panel, which is going to go over the print there underneath, in case anyone ever takes it off and looks at it to see who's who and what's what. And the door to the right goes into a large gallery. It's a beautiful corridor, but you can see the curve now for sure. And we're getting ready. So there's the 4 of us, Rachel and Carly, myself and Eric, celebrating that we did it. We got the darn thing up on the wall. And we installed 97 removable panels, and the mural extended 1/4 of an inch, just 1/4 of an inch of extra length at the end. We had fitted it so closely in the installation process, which I thought was a miracle. I mean, 1/4 of an inch is almost nothing for shrinkage and so on, taking into consideration the mural, the shrinkage, the curved wall. It was an overwhelming task. And then we finally got it all together, which was just incredible. And so in September and October, We'd worked all summer. We started 2005 in August, got permission, built the easel. In 2006, I walked off and on. And in January, I didn't have a class to teach, so I was able to work full time up in the pole barn. And we carted things back and forth, laid everything out, got the tapcons all screwed into the backs of the plywood, got the edges all painted, and got the pieces all up on the wall with the black paint on the wall and on the edges of the panels. And then it was time to do the crowning grace of the glass sky. Now, Eric teaches glass at the college. And so we were getting ready then after we put the last panel on to do the glass. And this on the upper right-hand corner was a plan for the glass. It's over the blasting channels and for the sky. I wanted sky on the mural. I just seemed like it had to have something besides just rock channels and things jutting out from the wall. So this is over in the ceramics studio where Eric is working on my pattern that I worked out with the glass. When we cast glass, we cast glass bricks. You can see these bricks. And then we didn't want them all in bricks. We wanted them to fit. So on the left, you can see how we've cut the glass in the studio. We cast it and we cut it to fit the pattern that I designed up for the sky to put the bricks in. I just didn't want them laid in like brick by brick, but I wanted them irregular. So, and then I decided not to use colored glass. That was too much work. And we have a wonderful place with Golden Artist Colors about 30 miles. They're the best acrylics, I think, in the world. But anyway, Golden Artist Colors is about 30 miles from my college. And I used Golden Artist Blue to paint the back of the glass rather than trying to use colored glass. And so Eric is working on my pattern and planning how to cut the glass. And you can see some pieces are cut there on the right to be installed within the triangular steel frame. We put a steel frame, Eric built a steel frame for me to put up in the corner there, a triangular steel frame to hold the cut glass after we had the mural completely installed. And here Eric and I are in the glass shop, excuse me, which is part of the kiln room. And we're going to put cast the glass into the mold there on the lower right on the left-hand side. And we're casting those rectangles. And then Eric is doing a gather out of the glass furnace and I'm helping. I got the door. I'm big help. It was pretty heavy. Those ladles of glass are pretty heavy. And so there Eric on the right has the glass full of, in the ladle, full of, the ladle's full of glass. And we're casting them into those rectangular steel forms. I blew glass for about 18 years after I left the chair. I left the chair in 1990 and then just moved back into the faculty working full time. And so my last 2 years, I took a 2-year buyout. I worked half time so that I could do this mural, which occupied full time besides my teaching. And having left the department chair, I just focused in the studio. I taught beginning drawing, I taught a course of ceramics, and had my advising hours. Excuse me, I need a little drink of water. It was just an exciting time. Sorry. So starting in 2005, by October and September and October 2007, we had the mural installed in July. Sorry, I have a little laryngitis. And so then after we got the glass all planned and doing the casting in the studio, I was ready to paint the backs after Eric cut them. I painted the backs with that cobalt blue for the sky rather than doing colored glass, which looked blue against the sky. You couldn't tell it was clear glass. It just turned out beautifully. And Eric did all the heavy lifting in the hot shop. He gathered the glass from the tank and poured the hot glass from the ladle into the steel form. And we cast 18 glass blocks. And then we had to cool them, of course, in the annealing oven. And then Eric cut the oblong glass blocks into the irregular shapes. And I used the golden artist color to paint the backs. And when the cobalt colored paint was dry, I sealed it with a clear auto body sealer coating for permanence. I was worried about just using acrylic paint on the back, so I did seal it to make sure that it would be intact against the concrete wall. Sorry. And then Eric installed the steel triangle up in the upper left. Now there he is pouring the ladle. That's really, really heavy. And then we had the rectangular block, and we poured the molten glass from the ladle into the steel mold. And then those had to be cooled and annealed for a couple days. And then he was able to cut them, and then I painted the backs. It was a laborious project. In September and October, it took us 2 months to do the glass, and that's in the hot shop. And so then that is the pattern, and the pieces are all cut, and the hand cut glass shapes are in the steel frame. And then I was testing out the different colors of acrylic for the blue to paint on the back. And you can see they're all numbered also. You have to number pieces and have a pattern and a map to know where you're going. And so each glass block was cut, and I made numerous tests on the back of glass pieces to see what cobalt color I liked. And then I used that auto body coating for permanence because I was worried about just using acrylic on the back, and I wanted to seal it really well. And then Eric put the glass pieces in the steel triangle to complete the mural. So here we have the hand cut glass pieces, and then he's ready to put the steel frame up in the hallway. And there you have the completed mural. I'm so sorry about the laryngitis. But this is an installed view in the corner.
Please have water. Sorry to disturb. Please take a minute and have water, please.
Thank you. I had pneumonia last October, and I haven't gotten over the laryngitis ever since. I'm hoping I get my voice back completely.
You will. Thank you.
But it'll give you a minute to enjoy the entire mural. I took a picture from each end. So there you can see the glass on the left installed for my sky. And then on the right, from the other end, that's from the ceramic studio. And on the left, the ceramic studio door is at the far end, and the sculpture door to sculpture is on the very left. And so you can see that jut out in the middle, after firing, comes out about 12 inches, and it's 8.5 feet high by 23.5 feet wide. On the far end, I love blasting channels. When they're putting roads through in New York, they blast to do the rock faces. And I just thought that was so impressive. So I easily went from the blasting channels on the far end under the glass sky, as the pieces jutted out more like a rock face and were blasted. And as I moved across the sky over into the place that's 8.5 feet high, 12 feet out into the quarter. I'm sorry, 12 inches, 1 foot out into the quarter, and it's 23.5 feet wide from end to end, and it's 12 inches or 1 foot deep. That piece that juts out the most right there is the 12 feet. And then here on the far end, and we're only a quarter of an inch off, which I thought was incredible. You consider the curved wall, the shrinkage, and the incredible amount of panel by panel, and making it fit all back together was phenomenal. And I thought that the sky worked out really well. The clear glass looks really blue, blue, blue with that acrylic blue from Golden Artist Colors, and the Autobata sealer behind it to make sure it was permanent, because once it's in, it's in. That could be removed also because it was put into the steel frame. So I met all the demands, and we went from August 2005 until the end of October 2007 to get the entire mural together at Hartwick College. And it's just easy to see the configurations and the differentiation. And I wanted to show, actually, the middle piece, the middle section here, there's a rock face up on campus. The Hartwick College is built on a very hilly place. And so there's a rock face up by the science building. We have the different buildings. We have the humanities, the library, the Center for the Arts, and Clark Hall, Brzee Hall, the science building. And up by the science building, the driveway that goes by that, there's a big rock face. And the center section here was copied, essentially, inspired by the rock face, right there on campus. And then the blasting channels down here were inspired from all those photos I took at the very beginning of blasting to put road through over in nearby villages and things. It's very, very hilly terrain, upstate New York. And so this is the entire mural. And it took from 2005 until in August until 2007 in October for me to get it all together. And it was worth the effort. I had 36 paid and unpaid helpers, and so I made a chart of all the people that contribute either money or time, of the people that starting from maintenance, loaning me the knife from the kitchen, the 15-inch knife. They're hard to find, trust me, to cut those deep sections in the ceramics. And the carpenter. I'm gonna get another drink of water, thank you. There, finally. I'm getting my voice back. Thank you for your patience. And I hope you've enjoyed this whole process. And so all the people, there's Kristen, her name, who helped hollow out the backs and put the epoxy on, and faculty, and there's Andrew's name, and your students and different people, carpenters, everyone contributed. It was just and they put wonderful lighting up in the hall to show off the mural. And so then this is the finished mural. And with the 23.5 feet, it was just a huge undertaking. And I thought I met the challenge really well to get my rock face with the glass sky. I was inspired, and I was thrilled to do it. And I guess that's it pretty much all together for building a ceramic mural. It was a lot of work, and I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Incredible. Incredible is the word, Roberta, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, you're completely welcome.
So we do have some questions.
Okay.
So Shayanti is asking that how did you install the last panel on the top left corner?
Excuse me. It was screwed in the same way. Because the panels sat on top of each other. As we started on the bottom, the panel was set on top, and we went row by row. You can see on the blasting channels some of the panels. It's hard to see the panels because I painted the black on the wall. There were 97 panels and 355 ceramic pieces. And after we decided what each panel could hold, then we just moved from right to left, all the way across. And the last panel just screwed in, and then it was painted over up on top. So you couldn't see the screws, and it just set into place. And it was screwed in there at the very end. And it's painted black on each end, so you can't see them. The brackets, those little brackets with the screws in. There's a little bit of space there, about 2 inches on either side of the mural. On the left side, the brackets do stick out behind the edge of the piano, but you can't see them because it's painted black.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Roberta.
Does
I
that
think-
answer the question?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It does. Thank
I
you.
think we can switch on the camera so that Roberta can see you all. So, and you can ask your questions. So,
There is a question from Swati. Did any of your pieces break and during the firing, and did you redo it? And what was the approach for the same?
No, nothing broke. They the clay was the 200 pounds of clay were just handled very carefully, and it was thick. It had a lot of grog to make it really strong. And because I wasn't using glazes, it was easy to handle. With I just used underglaze for color, and to make it look like a rock face. I mean, it's greens and blues, but it's so subtle you don't really see it. And each panel, then the ones in the middle, the panels in the very center, you could only get a couple pieces on a panel. For this one right here, there's the panel right there with those two pieces, because that came out 12 inches, but it was so thick and with so much grog, I didn't have any trouble. It was handled carefully, but I had no breakage. It was just thickly grogged stoneware clay, fired up to cone 10. So it was really strong. It wasn't an issue. It was just getting things epoxied onto the boards and figuring out how to install it to make it removable. That was the challenge. But nothing broke. And on the cut glass, we just handled it really carefully. But I thought the sky turned out incredibly well.
Yeah, indeed.
And the lighting they put on it in the corner really shows it off. It's amazing. It looks beautiful. And it was finished in 2007. And it looks like yesterday. I mean, it looks beautiful in the hallway for the mural.
Oh, nice. Okay, we have one more question. Says that Rachna is saying that it's a very insightful presentation. Would you like to share more about making slips for this work?
Oh, well, I've been making ceramics since 1955, and I have slips and slip formulas from Otto and Vivica Haino. It was amazing. I put myself through school on painting fellowships, but I always took ceramics after my first course in 1955 at the University of Michigan. I loved ceramics, but I was a drawing and painting major. I started painting when I was 10 years old, and I've been painting all my life. But somehow I ended up not getting a Fulbright in painting because I was a girl. And I reapplied and I got it in ceramics to go to Spain. Spanish is my backup. And so I got slips from everybody, everywhere. I've been doing ceramics since 1955 formally, even though I was a drawing and painting major. I was just an art major. And I collected slips and sorry. Otto and Vivica Haino had worked with them for 2 years at Chouinard Art Institute in LA, which was, I had a full scholarship there. I was in Mexico for a year on a painting fellowship at San Miguel de Allende. Spanish is my backup. And then I went to Chouinard after I got a full tuition scholarship, room and board and tuition, where I got my BFA, my undergraduate degree in art school. And it was an incredible art school in California and Los Angeles. And Otto and Vivica had I did a lot. Vivica was a master of glazes and glaze calc and slips. And I got many of my slips from Otto. And I just learned that as I progressed through ceramics. And then after the Fulbright in ceramics, working for 2 years in Spain with Artigas and Mural, the painter, I've just had an incredible trajectory. I'm working on a memoir because I'm having such an incredible life that I wanted to share it with people.
Lovely. Then we have one more question. It says that how did you manage the curve? Were the pieces flat or curved as the wall?
They were built on the curved easel, and they fit on the boards, and the boards just locked it together. It's the easel was 30 feet and the mural is 23 and a half. It fits into the curved wall. Excuse me. And as we screwed the brackets in, they just locked into place on the curve because they weren't so big. They could fit the curve okay. It's hard to explain. They just nested together and just, even though they were flat, they fit the curve. I don't know how to explain it.
No worries. Okay. So someone has similar question. Had the wall been flat, would the entire planning would be different, or would you have had the same plan in place?
No, I would have had the same plan, but it would have been flat. I could have done it on a flat plywood easel, but because it had to fit the curved wall, then the panels were small enough that they fit the curve. It's hard to explain. The panels are not, I mean, they're, you know, a couple 3 feet across, and the curve is gentle enough that the flat panels were able to screw into the wall and fit the curve and nest together. It just worked out. It was a challenge, but I figured it out.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a geological significance to the rock face design?
Not particularly. We have so many rock faces upstate New York, blasting and blasting channels, which have always enchanted me. Excuse me. And the rock faces, I just felt inspired by them, and it just grew little by little, and I wanted something to fill that big space, and it just I've done other smaller sculptures, and I do a lot of installations in ceramics, and so I consider this a big installation.
Nice. We have a few more questions. Which type of color do you use in your artworks? Colored glass or stain colors?
Well, we can do color. Excuse me. I'm so sorry about my voice. I've done a lot of colored glass. I blew glass for 18 years after I left the chair. I didn't have time. I did a little bit. From 1975, I established the glass shop with a grant from Corning, which is only 2.5 hours away from me. Corning glass factory, you know, Corning ceramics and dishes and things. Corning, New York, gave me this. Had a grant, and I've established the glass furnace and the tanks and things as we were building the building in 1975. And Mikhail Pavlik, a very famous artist, glassblower who lives in Mexico now, was an escaped Czechoslovakian painter, glassblower, and we built the glass shop, and I built the kiln room. I built a 60 cubic foot kiln with a student. In 1975. We moved into the building in 73, but it took a couple years to get all the parts together for the kiln room and the ceramic studio. I have a ceramic studio. I made 3,500 square feet, and I had 20 wheels, a big kiln room, storage. It's an incredible building that I helped 4 of us put it together for music and art. And the 4 of us in the art department at the time. And then when I became chair in 1973, I quadrupled the faculty over the time and quadrupled the budget. I'm a builder. And I guess a mural is just another part of my building episode in life.
Lovely. Nandita has a question. How did you determine where to fix the brackets on the panels? it would be important that they don't interfere with the brackets and screws on the adjacent panels, right?
Well, that's why the brackets and screws were only on two sides of the panel, because the panels nested together. So they had the bracket, the couple brackets on the top and 3 brackets on the side. And each panel was about 2 or 3 inches thick. So the panel would sit on the panel below it. And it would sit over the brackets. It was not an issue. And then on the left and the top, the panel would sit on top of the brackets. And so we were able to just set the panels on top of each other and screw the 2 sides in, set the next panel in, screw the 2 sides in. It just took a long time because we had to drill into concrete for the 3 sides and the two at top and 3 on the side. And we did, that's my son. And there are no screws on the right or the bottom because each panel was thick enough it could just sit on the one below it.
Mm.
And then each panel sat on the one on top, and then along the very top there's paint where the brackets stuck over the top edge, and on the left side where the brackets stuck out over the left edge. And it's painted black so you can't see them. There's just a little edge there.
Okay.
And so that system, we devised it as we went along, how to put it together.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah. So how did you account for shrinkage?
Just figured it out. About 17%.
Oh, that's a lot. And what would be the
High fire stoneware? Maybe it was more like 15. I don't have that exact figure, but I just I didn't worry about the shrinkage. I just put a 30-foot easel down and said I'm going to make it 25 feet, which I did, and it went down to 23.5 inches.
Okay.
By the time we got the whole thing together, I just let it sort of take care of itself. I've been doing ceramics so many years. I just laid it out on the easel, and I figured with the heavily grogged stoneware, it wasn't going to shrink that much. So it did shrink, but I didn't care if I had 1, 2, or 3 inches on either end. I left enough room for it to fit. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And what would be the approximate thickness of the clay pieces?
Well, the one in the center right here is 12 inches
Okay.
deep. And then you have to count for the plywood, which is about a 1/2 inch.
Okay.
And then and that's 12 inch, and those are only about 4, 3. It just go, you can see the width, 12 inches down to the flatter areas. And the glass, that's about each glass thing is about 3 inches. 2, 3, yeah, 3. Yeah, each glass piece is about, we made decent heavyweight cubes of glass.
Okay. So this is quite heavy. So how the wood behind that you used, how did you decide that how many pieces would go on those panels?
We weighed them, and we decided what we could lift and what we could handle and how they would fit together and the size of the pieces and how much they weighed. And then we had anywhere from 7 pieces over there on the right over to like 2 pieces there in the middle for the weight.
Yeah.
What each panel could handle.
Okay. Okay, we have one more question. The right side of the panel has prominent vertical lines. Was that deliberate to highlight the left heavy bulky texture?
It was deliberate. Those are blasting channels. When they're putting roads through, when they do blasting, they have blasting channels, and those reflect the blasting channels that you see when they've cleared out areas in rocky places for roads. I wanted them to show.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think, yeah, thank you so much. Any more questions? Do we have any more questions? Thank you so much, Roberta. Over to you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I hope it's been enjoyable.
Absolutely amazing. It was really insightful and amazing. Thank you, Roberta, for your time.
Completely welcome. Yeah,
Great.
many of my friends have made many murals, and I had a lot of friends at the University of Wisconsin, and then my good friend there gave me the formula for the clay body, which was he did a lot of murals, Bruce Howdle, and so the clay worked out really great with the heavy grog, and it made it really strong.
So was it a very thick grog or you had a fine grog that you used?
It was a medium grog. It was decent. Yeah, you could tell the clay was grogged.
And percentage
it
wise,
was-
how much?
well, I don't have the exact formula. I'd have to look that up, but it was a fairly decent amount of grog. I just used Bruce's formula. I can locate the formula, and it had the amount of grog with it.
Okay, thank you.
I can send that to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, guys?
And
And-
looking forward to your memoir.
Oh, thank you. I'm in the 12th grade. I've got all 88 years there logged out with all the exhibitions. I've been making art for a long time, and I'm back up in high school and moving through, and then I'm going to have a friend of mine help me put it in some kind of format to make it interesting. I'm working chronologically right now. I've been working on it for 2 years.
Wow. All
Well,
the best.
I make a lot of art. I don't have time to write all the time. I'm going to be in a new show in September 6th, a group show over in Kingston at the International Museum of Dinnerware Design with an installation called Picnic. And I was just in 2 shows. Actually, I'm in one show. I just took work down from the Cooperstown National up in Cooperstown in their 90th National. I had an installation, and I've got a small piece, a new piece, a black hole in a group that I'm a member of. I'm a member here, and I'm a member of groups in Hawaii where I live half time. So I call myself a Hawaiian artist.
I think we would like to invite you again, Roberta, for your other works. You know, we would like to see your other
Oh,
works.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they will love
I've been
it.
doing ceramics for a long time. I've a lot of work and a lot of
Yes.
painting.
Yeah.
I'm still drawing and painting. In fact, the president of Hartwick College just invited me to put a painting in his office, and I took a 4 by 5 foot painting, and it's installed across from his desk. I was thrilled that he invited me to loan him a painting.
So we shall meet you again for another session. ICAF would love to have you again.
Well, this has been an honor and a privilege, and I thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Roberta. You're very kind.